Welcome back to A Wicked Historian.
Imagine this. It's the year 1828. You wake up before the sun, a sharp chill cutting through your thin shawl. A damp mist curls around your ankles as you step onto the worn cobblestones of Bolton Market. The air is thick with the smell of coal smoke, damp earth, and something else a metallic tang of fear. Your name is Margaret. For years, you've worked the small family farm, your hands raw from sewing, cooking, and endless chores, all to keep your household afloat. But today is different. Today, you stand in the market square, a coarse rope tied around your waist. The other end is held tightly in the hands of your husband, Thomas. His knuckles are white, and he won't meet your eyes. Just murmurs apologies that feel hollow and useless. The townspeople are starting to gather. They aren't here for produce or livestock. They're here for you. Men lean in, their eyes sharp, their voices low as they whisper calculations about your worth. This isn't a crime, not in the eyes of the law. It has something far more chilling, a practice sanctioned by a society that prides itself on being civilized. You feel hands on your arms, prodding, checking your muscle tone. Someone's fingers lift your chin, forcing your mouth open to examine your teeth. Just like a prize cow at auction, you are being catalogued, measured, evaluated, not as a human being, with thoughts and feelings, but as property, an object to be bought and sold. This shocking scene wasn't as rare as you might think. In a world where marriage legally erased a woman's identity, this was a grim reality for some. The legal doctrine of coverture meant that upon marriage, a woman was absorbed into her husband's identity. Before you were married, you could inherit property, own a business, earn your own money. But now, everything you have, everything you earn, even your own body, belongs to him. And here, in the bustling market of Bolton, this legal principle reaches its most visible, brutal conclusion. These public wife transfers, sometimes called wife sales, were a strange, informal way of ending a marriage when divorce was nearly impossible for anyone but the very rich. It was a form of public separation, witnessed by the community, creating a binding, if unofficial, end to a union. You watch as Thomas, your own husband, clears his throat. His voice is tight with nerves as he calls for bids. Who will take Margaret? He asks the crowd. Dozens of eyes skin you from head to toe, assigning a value to your life in shillings and pence. The humiliation is a physical weight, crushing you. But beneath the terror, a strange and unexpected feeling flickers: relief. Could this public shame actually be a doorway to freedom? The reality of these sales was complex. Some women, sold to new husbands, found themselves in better, kinder households. They escaped abusive or neglectful partners and found a measure of stability. Others were not so lucky. They were sold into even harsher conditions, their suffering only amplified. The public spectacle was a deep wound to their dignity, but in a world with no escape routes, it was an option born of pure desperation. Your mind flashes back to the endless cycle of your life with Thomas. The pre-dawn mornings tending to the children, the nights spent sewing by candlelight until your eyes burned, his sudden rages that left bruises on your arms. Every small injustice, every time he gambled away the food money, every dismissive word, it all led you here. This market, this terrible ritual, is the direct result of a system that offers women no other way out. Society has taken what it calls a legal solution and twisted it into a public spectacle. As the crowd murmurs and a man in the front row raises his hand to make a bid, you feel a bizarre mix of shame and hope. The horror of being sold like an animal is real, undeniable. But so is the tiny, persistent hope that through this cruel and bizarre ceremony, a new life, a better life, might be waiting on the other side. This wasn't just a bizarre historical footnote, it was a desperate strategy for survival. It was a social and legal theater where women had to navigate humiliation and public scrutiny just for a chance at a different future. The story of Margaret and the Bolton Market is a stark reminder of how much has changed and how legal and social structures can create desperate situations. now in the hidden corners of history. It wasn't just a place for buying livestock or produce. For some, it was a stage for a desperate act of survival. Imagine this, a bustling market square filled with the sounds of merchants and shoppers. But amidst the chaos, a different kind of transaction is taking place. A woman, often led by a halter like an animal, is being put up for auction. This was the grim reality of wife selling. Now, before we jump to conclusions, let's understand the world these women lived in. In the 19th century, a married woman had almost no legal existence. Her property, her earnings, even her children, belonged to her husband. Divorce was a luxury reserved for the incredibly wealthy, a complicated and expensive process far beyond the reach of the common person. So, what happened if you were trapped in a brutal, abusive marriage? How could you escape? For many working-class women, this public, humiliating ritual was the only way out. It seems barbaric, and it was, but it served a bizarre, informal legal function. The public sale, witnessed by the community, created a form of social contract. It was a declaration that the first marriage was over and a new one was beginning. This public spectacle, in a strange way, legitimized the separation in the eyes of the community, offering a layer of protection that the law denied them. Let's consider the story of Elizabeth, a seamstress from Manchester. Trapped with a cruel and violent husband, she saw no escape. But she had a secret ally, a kind blacksmith who wanted to build a life with her. The sale was their only option. Together, they orchestrated the event. The blacksmith would be the highest bidder. The public auction was a performance, a piece of theater designed to create a paper trail, however informal, that would validate her new life and protect her from her former husband. The humiliation was immense, but it was a calculated price for freedom. The crowd in these markets wasn't just a mob of gawkers. They were neighbors, local tradesmen, sometimes even the parish clerk. Their presence was crucial. Their whispers, their nods, even their jeers, served as a form of community validation. By witnessing the event, they were participating in a ritual that attempted to bend rigid, unforgiving laws to meet the desperate needs of real people. In this world, social acceptance could be as powerful as a legal decree. This system operated on a tightrope of social expectations. Everyone had a role to play, the desperate husband looking to offload his property, the beer who was often the woman's new partner, and the woman herself, forced to endure the indignity. Stepping outside these unwritten rules could lead to social ostracism or even legal trouble. Yet, within this oppressive framework, some women found ways to assert their own agency. The moment a woman removed the halter after the sale was a powerful symbol. It was a small act, but it represented her reclaiming a piece of her own life, a choice made amidst choicelessness. But let's be clear, this was not a guaranteed path to a better life. The price of survival was dangerously high. Families were torn apart, children could be lost in the process, and the psychological trauma was immeasurable. The story of Rebecca Walsh, sold in 1829, is a chilling reminder of the risks. She escaped one abusive husband only to find her new one was even crueler. Trapped by the very sale that was meant to free her, she had nowhere to turn. The informal nature of the contract meant she had no legal recourse when her life was in danger. It's easy to look back and condemn the individuals involved, but it's more important to understand the system that made such a practice possible. Legal scholars and religious leaders of the time often rationalized the subordinate status of women. Marriage was viewed as a property transfer. Women were seen as wards, and their obedience was considered a virtue. The immense human suffering caused by these beliefs was often ignored, abstracted away into legal and social theories that upheld the patriarchal order. So, the marketplace was both a theater of cruelty and a desperate stage for survival. Every bid, every whisper, every nod from the crowd was part of a complex social machine. A machine that, while stripping women of their dignity, sometimes offered them their only chance to stay alive. It forced women to navigate a treacherous path between absolute disaster and a sliver of opportunity. These events are a stark reminder of how societies can create informal, and often brutal, solutions when formal systems fail the most vulnerable. They reveal the incredible resilience of women who, faced with an oppressive system, found ways to fight for their own survival and carve out a measure of freedom. The stories of these women are largely forgotten, buried in old court records and local newspapers, but they deserve to be told. They show us the hidden networks of resistance and the quiet acts of courage that history often overlooks. While the market for wives was a brutal system, some women, like Elizabeth, Margaret, and others, discovered ways to not just survive, but in some cases, even thrive. How did they do it? They became masters of strategy in a game where the rules were stacked against them. They arranged secret agreements with men who were sympathetic to their plight. They used the power of community oversight the eyes of their neighbors to ensure a degree of fairness. Even public humiliation, something we'd see as purely negative, could be turned into a tool for legal protection. Take Elizabeth's story. Her sale was actually a prearranged transfer that allowed her to live with David Thompson, the man she secretly loved. In this new life, she raised her children, built a small workshop, and carved out a version of autonomy that the law denied her. She found a loophole, a crack in the system, and slipped through it. Margaret's situation was tougher. She was forced into a less kind household, but she learned to negotiate her daily tasks with incredible precision, all to protect her children. For women like her, every act, every gesture, every word spoken or withheld became a calculated survival strategy. But let's be clear, this system was unforgiving, and success was never guaranteed. Rebecca Walsh's story is a heartbreaking reminder of just how fragile a woman's agency was. She was sold to a man who saw her as property first and a human being a distant second. She tried to escape, to reclaim her freedom, but the law twisted her actions. Her attempts to be free were legally framed as theft, stealing herself from her owner. Rebecca died, crushed by a structure designed from the ground up to limit women's choices and extinguish their hopes. Her story shows the terrifying reality for those who could find a sympathetic ear or a strategic opening. Even so, the stories of these women reveal an incredible depth of human resilience. They adapted, they strategized, and they resisted in ways that were often subtle but powerful. The marketplace was a stage for a cruel transaction, but within that public theater, women found threads of control. They created silent agreements with a nod or a glance, used coded gestures to communicate what couldn't be said aloud, and formed clandestine alliances to support one another. These were acts of quiet rebellion, fought on a battlefield no one could see. It's tempting to view these stories purely as horror, and in many ways, they are, but the reality is more complex. The marketplace, with its rituals and public nature, was society's strange and disturbing attempt to reconcile an unyielding, rigid legal system with basic human needs like love, happiness, and escape from abuse. The outcomes were wildly different, ranging from stories of flourishing like Elizabeth's to the tragic end of Rebecca's. It was a high-stakes lottery where a woman's entire future was on the line. When we look at these stories, we see the echoes of historical oppression that still resonate in the modern world. Think about it. Systems that prioritize property, profit, or convenience over human dignity haven't vanished. They've just changed their form. The wife-selling market of Bolton, an extreme example, of course, but it's not entirely unique in its underlying principles. It's a stark reminder that legal and social frameworks shape our lives, often in invisible ways, and that resilience, then as now, is an ongoing, daily act of courage. So, what happened to this practice? How did it finally end? Next, we'll examine the final decline of wife-selling, the slow and painful evolution of legal divorce, and most importantly, the powerful lessons these women's lives teach us about justice, power, and survival in our own world today. By the mid-19th century, things finally started to change. The Matrimonial Causes Act of 1857 made divorce a little more accessible. though it was still incredibly expensive and out of reach for most. At the same time, the Industrial Revolution was in full swing, and new factory jobs gave some women a sliver of financial independence for the first time. Slowly but surely, the most extreme and public rituals of wife-selling began to fade away into the shadows of history. Yet, the legacy of this practice is long and dark. Think about it. Generations of women endured unimaginable trauma. They were torn from their families, their children, and their communities. They had to navigate a world that legally and socially saw them as nothing more than property to be bought and sold. Even if they managed to survive the ordeal, their dignity was often shattered. It's a chilling reminder of how legal systems can normalize cruelty and how real, meaningful change is often a slow, painful, and uneven process. But within this darkness, we also see the incredible power of human ingenuity. These women were not just passive victims. They found clever ways to assert their own choices, even within a system designed to crush them. They used secrecy, they played social roles, they found and exploited legal loopholes. They negotiated, they resisted, and they adapted. For many, survival wasn't just about endurance, it was an act of brilliant strategy. The marketplaces where these grim transactions took place may be gone, but the lessons they teach us are as relevant as ever. Systems that prioritize control over human dignity, that turn real suffering into abstract, bureaucratic terms, these haven't disappeared. They've just changed their shape. We see their echoes today in economic exploitation, in systemic inequality, and in the social invisibility of marginalized groups. As you think about the stories of women like Margaret, Elizabeth, Rebecca, and the thousands of others whose names have been lost to time, remember that their experiences aren't just historical oddities. They are warnings. They warn us how easily institutions can dehumanize people, how laws can fail to protect the vulnerable, and how entire societies can rationalize cruelty. But they also show us something else. They show us that human resilience, strategic thinking, and profound courage can persist even in the darkest of times. And so, the question for us today becomes, what systems in our own world rely on making human suffering invisible? And what can we learn from the past to ensure that dignity and justice finally prevail for everyone? History's marketplaces are silent now, but their echoes still reverberate. Join us as we continue to uncover these forgotten corners of the past, witness the incredible strength of the human spirit, and ask the tough questions that society often tries to avoid. The stories can be uncomfortable, but they are the ones that demand to be heard. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this story as compelling as I did, make sure you subscribe to A Wicked Historian, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next dive into the past. And I'd love to hear from you. Comment below, and let me know what kind of stories you want me to explore next. See you in the next video.